Carolyn, your host for Citizens Alert. The Niagara Regional Police are asking for your help in solving a crime. In the early morning of March 4th, 1980, 75-year-old Carolyn Northcott was brutally murdered, and the suspect is still at large. During this program, we'll be reconstructing that case for you, giving you specific police background. And we'll be letting you know who to contact if you have information that might help solve this special case. In addition, we'll be talking to experts for some tips on how to prevent crime before it's too late. Carolyn Northcott owned this building, and this is where she lived, in one of 3 apartments. She rented the other 2 out, and they were both occupied at the time of her death. She was 75 years old, and friends describe her as being both kind and religious. She was also an independent spirit. Just 4 years before, she'd moved away from her family to go it alone in the Falls because of her love of the gardens in the area. Carolyn was actively involved with the New Apostolic Church and attended regularly. She was in generally good health, loved company, and was well-liked. Why, then, did she become a victim of another senseless crime?
Come on, Sandy. Come on. Come on, boy. Away we go, baby. Come on. Come on, boy.
It was usual practice for Carolyn to let her dog out late in the evening and bring him in before retiring. She left the screen door open and inside door unlocked. The suspect entered through the rear door. Due to Carolyn's poor hearing, she may not have heard any warning from her dog or any noise the intruder might have made.
Here. You get out of here. Oh, no.
Carolyn Northcott's red wallet has never been found. Police presume that at least $185 in rent money was in the wallet at the time. For whatever the reason, the silverware set was left behind. The contents of the purses were scattered on the floor. We'll have more about tonight's unsolved crime and the resulting police investigation right after this. In 1980, as a result of a phone call at 6:45 in the morning, police responded to 5431 Bridge Street in Niagara Falls. Constables Harrison, Askland, and Cressman were dispatched. All 3 officers checked the upstairs tenants and spoke to one Vivian Crawford. She had not made the call to the police. The officers tried to interview other tenants, and it was learned that they were away on vacation. Then Constable Asklin tried the front door and found it to be unlocked.
Dog barking in there, see?
He pushed against the door because the bottom seemed to be stuck, and he was able to gain entrance. The three constables went in and were confronted by an Afghan dog. The living room was found to be neat and tidy. The dog led the police into the bedroom, where they found the first signs of a disturbance.
Dog on the bed there, I don't know, just be careful now. Looks like it's a beanie. That's a boy. Nice boy. Easy does it. Easy. That's it. Nice fella. Easy does it. Easy does it. That's it. Okay, Rick, she looks like she's dead. I think we've got a murder on our hands. We better get IDENT and CIB out here right away. Let's get out of here. Yeah.
Constable Harrison then went on to investigate the rest of the apartment.
At this point, I went into the kitchen area and observed the back door, which was wide open, which also had a screen. It was open. I went back and checked on the thermometer on the wall, the thermostat for the house, which the furnace was still running, and it was at 20 degrees Celsius.
Canvases of the Bridge Street and Hamilton Street homes started at 8:22 that morning. At that time, identification officers started an investigation of the inside of the house. The purses and their contents were photographed as they lay scattered on the bedroom floor. Plaster casts of footwear impressions were made in the back walkway, the rear step, and around the area of the back door. They were later confirmed to be either a size 8 or a size 9. At 11:06 a.m. on March 4th, the body of Carolyn Northcott was taken to the morgue at the Greater Niagara General Hospital. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, fingernail, hair samples, and fingerprints were recorded. Mrs. Northcott's body had been taken to Hamilton General Hospital for additional examination. This was performed by Dr. James Ferris of the Regional Forensic Pathology Unit. Dr. Ferris, why was there a second examination?
On the basis of information that the police received the same day as the first autopsy, the pathologist and the police felt that there were still some questions that hadn't been answered. And the pathologist suggested that the body should be transferred to Hamilton General, to this department, so that we could carry out a further examination and see whether we might answer some of those questions.
And what did that second examination reveal?
Well, we found evidence of bruising on the neck, and we found some bruising on the face. These bruises had been visible the first day, but following the period of 24 hours, the bruising became more prominent, and it was possible, therefore, to recognize these injuries as being caused by direct blows, and the one to the neck being caused by strangulation. We also found other changes in the body, in the lungs and in the heart, and the presence of little blood spots on the surface of the eyes, very typical of asphyxiation. So there seemed no doubt, therefore, that death had been the result of manual strangulation.
Reverend Brown, what kind of person was Carolyn Northcott?
Well, as I've often already said to the police as well as other people whom we talked to, she was a gem. That's all I can say. A lady who never tried to see any fault in anybody else. She was a person that I would say you couldn't help loving. And of course, we in the congregation, we went, shall we say, overboard to accommodate her. We tried to make life as pleasant and easy as we possibly could, being that she was alone, number one. Number two, she didn't have very many means, shall we say, in order to look after the needs. We tried to look after her as much as we possibly could also whenever we noticed this. But by the same token, she tried to hide it. She tried to cover that up. Any deficiencies she tried to cover.
Mrs. Brown, when was the last time you saw Mrs. Northcott alive?
The night before she died.
Tell me about that night.
That night I went over, I bought her some groceries. I had stopped after shopping, and we had a long talk. She talked about her life, and then she said she wanted to be adopted, and I said, well, you take your time. You make sure you know what that is all that you want. And she told me she had a beautiful silver service there. And I said, when you ever think of selling it, remember me. And she said, that will never be sold. That belongs to the Northcott girls. And of course, I understood that.
Sergeant White, tell me about the time you visited Mrs. Northcott's apartment with her daughter.
Tom and I went there with her daughter, and we found that although the silverware was out of place, everything else seemed to be intact. The only thing that she was able to tell us was that a red plastic purse was missing, and that the silverware would not have been normally kept where it was found.
Do you know whether Mrs. Northcott kept in touch with her daughter?
They did by phone, usually every Saturday, and they visited quite often.
Did she have any particular reason for moving to Niagara Falls?
She was very interested in the gardens. She loved the gardens here. She was fiercely independent. She was in fine physical health, although she did have a bit of a back problem.
How do you think she got along with people?
She got along with people very well. She was quite friendly and open with people, and she would receive guests up until midnight. She usually kept her doors locked once she went to bed.
Are you aware of anyone else having keys to her apartment?
No, we weren't aware of anybody else having keys to the apartment except perhaps for a volunteer worker that checked on Mrs. Northcott's welfare from time to time.
How was her vision?
Her vision was such that she was totally helpless without her eyeglasses, and she was never far from them. Also, she suffered greatly from hard of hearing, and from time to time she suffered from dizzy spells.
We'll return to the unsolved murder of Caroline Northcott right after this. All neighbors in the Bridge Street area were questioned soon after the murder. Now, almost no one reported any strange occurrences the night of the crime, but the following clues may still prove to be of value. Staff Sergeant, you re-interviewed Mrs. Northcott's daughter on March 19th. Now, what did she have to say then?
That time, the daughter was able to tell us perhaps that a crystal bowl was missing and some Canada savings bonds. However, to this date, it has never been determined if the crystal bowl was in fact given away or was taken from this particular break-in.
What do you know about Mrs. Northcott's financial situation?
Well, she wasn't well off. She didn't have a lot of money. She may have had some rent money in her purse, but if she had a lot of money, she would normally put it in the bank.
All the records show that her financial affairs were in good order, but there's no accounting for the $185 that Vivian Crawford gave her in rent money a few days before she died. Do you know what happened to the money?
No, we don't. We are not able to account for that $185.
The alleged killer actually called the police that night after committing the crime. Can you tell us what happened?
The caller hung up, and several of our uniformed units were dispatched to Bridge Street, and at 7:03 a.m., the man called back again.
I received another call from the same person. He was using the same payphone again.
Given the Niagara Regional Police.
Is this an emergency, sir?
Yes, it is.
I had other calls and I disconnected. I went on to my other duties and held the line open until I reached a supervisor and told her what happened. From that point on, we set out to trace the call.
The connection was made to our office, the main switchboard, and accidentally sent off to our Welland Division office, at which time the call was received by the station sergeant, Sergeant Gunter.
On Tuesday, March 4th, I was working the 12 to 8 shift in the Welland office. At 7:06 a.m. by my watch, I answered a call from a male voice.
I'm sorry about the murder on Bridge Street. It's really bothering me.
Yes, what murder?
Last night on Bridge. I know I'm going to get 10 or 11 years, but I got to think.
Well, tell me about it.
No, I've got to think it out. I'll call back later. I'll call you back later.
Well, what's your name? I'll get you some help.
No, I'll call back. I'm going to hang up now.
I then called the Niagara Falls desk to inform the staff sergeant of the call. As a result of this conversation, I then called Sergeant William Page and made him aware of the call to isolate any taped part of the conversation. Bill, Bob Gunter in Welland. About 5 after 7, the call was transferred through on extension 260. Isolate the tape. It is a homicide investigation from Niagara Falls. Put it on a reel, and I'll get back to you as soon as I have some more details.
At 7:00 p.m. that day, I went down to the police station and listened to a tape of a male's voice that had been recorded. It sounded like the man who had called me earlier.
This is the Dorchester McLeod Plaza in Niagara Falls, about 2.5 miles from the scene of the crime. Now, on the morning of the murder, a number of people were seen right here. 2 of them by passers-by right at this phone booth, and a third by a store owner. The shop owner inside the store saw a man park a dark car near this phone. Now, when the suspect saw the witness, he turned quickly away from this phone and moved to another one near the street. He was described as being about 5'8", 145 to 150 pounds, and wearing a jacket that came to his waist. Early in the morning of March 4th, 1980, starting at 6:45 a.m., a bell operator received 2 phone calls from the alleged male suspect. Now, what you're about to hear is a tape recording of one of those calls. Listen carefully. This is the actual suspect's voice.
Speak on, please. Yes, could I have the information, please? In what city, sir? Niagara Falls.
What do you know about the suspect?
The suspect has a deep voice with good control and no accent, and after calling the police twice after the murder, he has never called back.
This is Carolyn Northcott's home, as photographed by identification officers on the day of the murder. When the police entered the apartment, they found the living room tidy with no evidence of a struggle. But it's believed that Mrs. Northcott was actually strangled in this room and then carried to the bedroom where her body was discovered. The contents of 2 purses were scattered on the floor. A red wallet was missing, which possibly contained the $185 in rent money that has never been accounted for. The silverware chest normally kept in the kitchen had been left on a chair in the bedroom. A silver tea service had been tampered with but left behind. It's believed the intruder gained entrance through the back door and left the same way. Impressions of footprints were taken at the door and in the alley where he made a hasty departure.
For us, it was a shock to hear that, well, that she had to meet with such a violent death.
What would you say to the elderly who are living alone and who may be living in fear after such a crime?
If now everyone of us within this community would keep his or her eyes open and notice cases like that, and then apply that, which we are basically here for, then there wouldn't be any elderly that would be lonesome. There wouldn't be any people in any city, for that matter, that would not know what to do with their day or with certain times, occasions such as Christmas, Thanksgiving, and so on and so forth.
Anyone having any information related to the murder of Carolyn Northcott can call the switchboard at Niagara Regional Police. The phone number there is area code 416-688-4111. Your calls will be held in complete confidence. When we come back, we'll have an expert tip on how to stop a crime before it happens.
Wanted on charges of escape from lawful custody from a mental institution and indecent assault on a male. His name is Richard Byrne, possibly using David Quigley as an alias. He is 5'11", weighing 170 pounds, with blue eyes and brown-grayish hair. He has a scar between his eyes. Canada-wide warrants are outstanding on Richard Byrne. He is considered dangerous and is also a sexual offender. If you have seen this man, contact your local police or the RCMP K Division, Edmonton, Alberta.
Criminals consider the elderly to be easy prey. To protect yourself from possible future crime, take note of the following popular schemes and pay particular attention to the warning signs.
Hi, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I was in the neighborhood and we noticed some things about the outside of your house that you might be interested in possibly having some work done. we have a special deal that's available now for senior citizens. And if you'd just like to step outside for a moment and take a look at what I'm talking about, maybe you'd consider...
Well, listen, wait till I get my coat on.
Certainly.
Door-to-door repairs. Impulse buying in your own home can result in a real loss for you while becoming a con man's dream. Most seniors want their home to last, and whenever something breaks down, they fix it fast. A phony door-to-door salesman will count on that while pointing out make-believe flaws in everything from your eaves trough to driveway pavement.
Yep, here's something else we can fix up.
Don't let 10% discounts or pay now and save deals blind you. Inevitably, these men and women all operate the same in the end. They'll make phony assessments, attractive offers, and after obtaining your cash, make a swift departure. Beware of callers who sport official-looking uniforms. Many elderly people hold a healthy respect for the law, but don't mistake one cap and badge for another. Ask for identification, and if it's not provided, be firm in your refusal to let possible swindlers into your home.
Seems to be a gas leak somewhere, ma'am. I think the best thing would be for me to check upstairs.
What's up there? $100,000.
There are many other schemes to be aware of. For instance, the phony bank examiner. He'll ask you for your assistance in nabbing a dishonest employee and request that you make a large cash withdrawal from your account. Then, instead of checking serial numbers on bills as he promised, he'll more than likely skip once you've handed over the cash.
Have a nice day. Thank you. I've got it. $1,000.
Good work. You've really helped us a lot. Here's your receipt.
For your own personal protection, always remember the following tips. Be wary of something-for-nothing schemes. Never sign a contract without the advice of a lawyer or a banker. And never turn over large amounts of cash to any stranger. No matter how enticing the deal, use caution. Think twice and don't be afraid to wait and ask for a second opinion. Make a point of remembering to protect yourself, and you won't become the next victim of a senseless crime. Once again, if you have any information at all about the murder of Carolyn Northcott, please contact the Niagara Regional Police at 688-4111. I'm Patrick Conlon. Join us next time for Citizens Alert.
Transportation for the cast and crew of Citizens Alert provided by Thrifty Rent-A-Car. For reservations or information, look in your yellow pages for the location nearest you.
Sunday, highlights of the week-long maiden flight of the American spaceship Challenger. An election called for the BC legislature. A special report by Christina Pokmersky. Life begins at 30. Everett Banning has details of these stories and more on Global Newsweek Sunday at 6. Also Sunday, Matt's in two minds whether or not to warn Jenny about the amorous reputation of a potential interviewee. On Goodnight Beantown, Global's got it Sunday at 8. Stay tuned right now for The Tonight Show following a global news update coming up next.